over the head. Pay attention.
All right, got 5:30. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you don't mind, would you please do the roll call?
Chairman York,
Here.
Vice Chairman Salazar Garza,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Mandel,
Here.
Commissioner Munoz is going to be absent, Commissioner Hedrick,
Here.
Commissioner Budd is going to be absent, Commissioner Cantu,
Here.
Commissioner Teichelman.
Here.
We have a quorum to conduct the meeting.
Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, just reading the rules for public comment.
Citizens will be allowed to attend and make public comments in person at the City Planning Commission meeting. The public is invited to speak on any agenda item and any other items that pertain to the Planning Commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you choose to speak during this period, you will not be allowed to speak again when the specific item is considered in order of the agenda.
Thank you. With that, go ahead and open up public comment. If anybody would like to speak, if you speak now, you cannot speak again later. Seeing none, we will close public comment. Move on, no approval of absences, so approval of minutes for the May 28th meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented by staff.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And moving on to consent agenda, items 2 through 5. Wait, is item 6 also
Item
No,
6
sorry,
is
that's a
separate item.
separate public hearing. Yeah, 2 through 5.
All righty, sir. Thank you. And for the record, Andrew Demas with Development Services, reading in tonight's consent agenda. Item number 2, London Village, Section 1, Block 1, Lot 1. Item number 3, Socorro Edition, Lot 1B-A and 1B-B. Item 4, Line Weber Tracks, Block 1, Lots 1 and 2. And item 5 for conditional approval, CG Glasscock Bay Front Addition, Lot 1A and 1B. Staff has reviewed the 4 plots for tonight's agenda. We have deemed them compliant with Texas Local Government Code as well as the Unified Development Code and recommend approval.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Commissioner, just so you know, if you will open up for questions, but after questions, we're going to do items 2 and 3, and then I'll be abstaining on 4 and 5, so we'll do 2 separate public hearings and 2 separate votes. But do any commissioners have questions on any of these?
I have a question on number 2. This London Village commercial property, where is the drainage going on this property?
The
Where's it
drainage would be flowing to County Road 47, which is along the western property line.
And this doesn't require any detention at this time, or?
The plans that were submitted, the stormwater quality management plan showed a balance between the pre and post calculations.
Okay, so it already shows a balance. We already have PI plans on this.
No PI plans are required.
Okay. And why is that?
Why?
I mean, I thought with all plats, we have to submit PI plans now. I thought that's the new
Well, I think it
norm.
means there's no public improvements, but they'll have.
Right, so as I'm
Site
sure,
development is different.
as I'm sure you reviewed the plat, you noted that no water construction required. It was going to operate on septic. So there would be no public improvements, therefore no PI plans.
Okay. And I do have one other question. It said on the note on here that there's no sidewalks required. Why is that?
On County Road 43, that is a highway, which is maintained. And then on County Road 47, those are ditches, so there is no sidewalk for the entire length of the road. It is a rural street design.
So on FM 43, as it gets developed further, nobody's going to have sidewalks in the front?
At this point, that discussion has not been had on what the future will be for County Road or for FM 43.
Okay. It's just odd because everything that gets annexed seems to require a sidewalk in the front. So this is just kind of one of the first pieces to get developed on that side. So we're going to set a precedent. If this doesn't do it, then there's really not going to be any sidewalks probably on any of it.
The same could be said for all of the plots that were approved by Planning Commission along Yorktown.
Yeah, which is a problem I see.
Right, in which we had to come in with a bond election, so.
Yeah, then ultimately the city's responsible for it and the taxpayers have to foot the bill. So That's why I was just surprised that there weren't any sidewalks required on this, at least this first section, to kind of set the stage. So that's all I got.
Or at least a waiver to correspond with the, they're not required.
Man, if only somebody had been asking for a mechanism to put aside money for a sidewalk waiver.
Like a fee in lieu of construction, yeah.
Oh, you're talking about impact fees.
No, I've been asking them to create something in the ordinance to have an account to set money for waivers, just like that sidewalk waiver. Every time we waive sidewalk for stuff in Flower Bluff, on the island, wherever, where they make sense, they could still be putting money in the pot, but because they didn't have a pot to put money in, we can't require it.
Impact fees take care of all that.
If only.
That's a different story. All right, any other questions? Okay, we are going to open the public comment for items 2 and 3. Seeing no takers, we will close public comment and entertain further discussion or a motion on just items 2 and 3, please.
Make a motion that we approve items 2 and 3 as presented by staff.
Commissioner Rendell, I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving on to items 4 and 5, public hearing and vote, and I will be abstaining.
Okay, so moving on to items 4 and 5. We already had questions for the commission, right? So
Yes,
now I'll
ma'am.
go ahead and open up the public comment on
Correct.
items number 4 and 5. Anybody like to come and speak on behalf of items 4 or 5? If not, then I'll close the public comment and entertain a motion or further questions for staff.
I move that we approve items 4 and 5 as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Moving on to item 6.
Good afternoon, Karen Costanzo with Planning and Community Development. Just waiting on the slideshow to be pulled up. There we go. Thank you. So the item before you is the Padre Mustang Island Mobility Plan. This item actually initiated from the Island Area Development Plan. Mobility plan was a high priority identified within that ADP, and the community had requested for that plan to get funded. So this is a TERS-funded project. It launched in 2023 with the Economic Development Department, and then early summer, we, over at Planning and Community Development, received this project as we had some staff transitions. Looking at the plan at that point, determined that we wanted to speak to TxDOT specifically and identify some recommendations for Park Road 22 as well as 361 over on the island, which we certainly did, and also worked closely with the ISAC, the Island Strategic Action Committee, to finalize recommendations for the various facilities within the island that are part of this plan. We have taken this draft document over to the ISAC for their recommending action. They have recommended, and we'll talk a little bit with some modifications, and those are in front of you as well, so we'll go over those at the end of the presentation. To just give you a broad overview, the intention of the mobility plan is to focus on connectivity for pedestrians, people's riding bikes, people using their golf carts to get around, as well as vehicles, and also watercraft, ways to connect the community with attractions, whether it be the beach or area parks, as well as local businesses, whether they live on the island or are visiting. So the mobility plan does have several sections, but the core recommendations follow geographic groupings. So we have a set of recommendations for TxDOT facilities that I'm going to focus on in today's presentation, but there's also specific recommendations for the area that you see on this map in orange, which we're calling the North Loop streets, city beach connectors, which are city-owned streets, that are over near the beach side, as well as county beach connectors, which are within the county park area. And then on the west side of Park Road 22, we're calling that the West Island connectors, which are mainly residential connectors, and also where we have the Whitecap Preserve development coming on board. So again, focusing on the TxDOT facilities, the recommendation for Highway 361 between Park Road 22 over to the entrance of the Lake Padre development that it will be coming online is to have on the south side of the street a shared use path that is a 15-mile-per-hour path for both bicycles and golf carts, taking them out of the vehicle travel lanes. There would also be a separate sidewalk facility for pedestrians that would obviously be moving at a much slower pace than 15 miles per hour, and landscaping. For Park Road 22, we have a significant amount of right-of-way to work with, so that gives us an opportunity to keep the travel lanes, the vehicle travel lanes, and the existing median as is, and then look at adding both additional opportunities for stormwater collection and then stormwater underground gray infrastructure, as well as on both sides having two-way golf cart and bicycle paths. So you could see that that is 14 feet on each side, or 7-foot lane in each direction, and then an additional 8-foot sidewalk on each side of Park Road 22 with landscape buffer next to the businesses. There's some elevation there as well, so that will help with some of that. Again, it's 15 mile per hour for those shared use paths for bicycles and golf carts. There's also a recommendation to reduce Park Road 22 from its current 55 mile per hour speed to 45 mile per hour. That's something that had come up during the area development plan discussions, and the community really wants to see that move forward. So again, bring that to fruition through this planning process. And then in addition, beyond Aquarius Street, towards those businesses that are located underneath the JFK Causeway, like Snoopy's or Doc's, being able to have a side path. We have a photo here of another side path that's connected to a bridge. It may not be attached necessarily, but having a separate side path at least 20 feet wide to accommodate all those modes of transportation to get to those businesses. And a lot of engineering still would need to be done there. It could be on the north or south side of the JFK, depending on wetland impacts and what would make the most sense from an engineering standpoint. We do have an implementation portion of recommendations within this document, and the Park Road 22 and the side path are broken up into pieces, again, with understanding that some items will take 10, 15 years or more to come online. I'll go through these slides a little bit more quickly, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have an appendix that looks very specifically at the water exchange bridge on Park Road 22. We have a lot of right-of-way on this new bridge, and one of the questions is, how do people get over, under, across, and around, be able to get between the Whitecap Preserve and the Lake Padre development? And so we did include within the appendix some preliminary engineering analysis on feasibility, as well as load analysis, just to get us going in that process. But as always, we'll continue to take a look at this as it's time to bring those side paths online for Park Road 22. So again, this is all in the document. You each have a copy in front of you, as well as a digital copy is available within your agenda packet. Again, just some renderings of what those paths might look like underneath the water exchange bridge, just kind of showing some of the height availability. In addition to the TxDOT facilities, we looked again at the city beach, the county beach, the North Loop, and the west connectors for ways that we can amend what is existing without having to invest a full amount of money for reconstruction, right? So where it was feasible, there are interim recommendations for each of these facilities that use the existing pavement width. A lot of them are wide enough to be able to accommodate either some sidewalk, could be painted, we could use bollards or armadillos to help delineate where people will walk or ride their bikes. Here's an example just from Leeward Drive, closer to the Whitecap Beach. And you can see that there's a lot of right-of-way and pavement to work with. So in the interim, being able to have, the same two-way vehicle traffic, add parking, and add a bicycle and pedestrian shared use path. In the long term, where reconstruction would take place, extending the amount of pavement, and again, this could be 10, 15, maybe even 20 years out, depending on, funds available for these types of projects. Again, having those, traffic being able to go two ways and having parking on both sides, but then converting to bike golf cart shared use path and having the pedestrians in a separate facility from those vehicles. One thing to note is transportation technology is changing rapidly, so we completely understand that this is, based on current conditions. By the time it's time to reconstruct some of these streets, the world may look different, right? Not all of us saw scooters coming is one of my examples, right? So those electric scooters and electric bikes, personal mobility devices are kind of taking over in other cities quite rapidly, and we may be seeing some of that here soon as well. So all of these plans are living documents. Again, I mentioned that we do have an implementation portion within the document, short, mid, and long term, with the short term being the next 1 to 5 years. Just a couple highlights. Both Sand Dollar and Crow's Nest are paper streets currently on the island, and the TERS number 2 has already set aside $7.2 million over the next several years for construction of those two, or portions of those two streets. So those are highlighted in the short term, as well as Park Road 22 from Aquarius to Whitecap. There's already a programmed project in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's transportation projects. It's early in their 10-year plan currently, but we may have an opportunity here to work with TxDOT and the MPO to bring that into an earlier implementation. That's the intention. Windward, as well as connecting that south part of Windward to Elif, which is essentially would connect the city beach connectors to the county beach streets. And on West Island, there's a few of those more local collector streets. Des Marinas, for example, is included in the recently adopted rapid pavement program. That's one thing to note, is that those interim recommendations allow these street plans to be included in that rapid pavement program during the restriping. So we can implement some of this pretty easily. As the street comes onto the rapid pavement program, we can get the restriping to meet the design in the interim recommendation, so that we are not spending millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars on reconstructing each one of these facilities. So in terms of next step, the reason this item is here in front of the Planning Commission is because this document is essentially amending Plan CC, the city's comprehensive plan, by attaching it to it as an element of the comprehensive plan. So it comes before Planning Commission as a public hearing and a recommending action for council. We'll then, after today's meeting, go to the TERS number 2 and brief them on the project, and that's tentatively scheduled for July pending their agenda. It's budget season, so that can be complicated. And then after that, we'll be taking it to City Council, again, public hearing and having 2 readings of the adopting ordinance. Everything will be updated on the website on Creating CC, so we have a project website that gives interested parties updates on when items are going either to Planning Commission, it's up there, or City Council. And we also have a constant contact email that we send out with those updates as well. With that, I stand for any questions. We have Craig Thompson here from the Island Strategic Action Committee, and also with me is Dan McGinn from the Planning and Community Development Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I had a couple quick comments, and then I'll see if commissioners have any others. One is I really appreciate seeing golf cart paths along Park Road 22 and 361 because of the two roads where golf carts aren't allowed, but they still end up all the time. So that's a great thing. Comment on the other streets. I noticed like Leeward. This is just my opinion, and maybe this was already discussed, but I think you don't really need the extra room for golf cart paths on minor streets, because like you said, there's other things that are, the golf carts have no problem being with the cars on the minor roads, so they're probably better there, and they make everybody slow down anyway, but then they get them off of the other path, because then you'll have bikes, and we already see scooters, and that'll probably keep coming, and then like you said, there's other things that are coming. So, but that's pretty minor, and I think I really like this vision. The only other comment I wanted to make, as we were discussing before the meeting, is would love to see, if you can put trees in here in the mobility plan, but if we could somehow implement that the island is oak trees instead of palm trees, would be great, because they're actually native and they provide shade. That would be awesome.
I will add, you have, in addition, a printout of the ISAC recommended amendments. I did say I was going to review those. Apologies, totally at the end slipped my mind. But the Island Strategic Action Committee did have 3 changes to the document in front of you. So you can see the printout for page 28, which is Park Road 22. Highlighted is an addition bullet of emphasized greenscape and adequate drainage solutions. I'm not, if it's this body's will, you can add emphasize greenscape, trees, and adequate, up to you if you wanted to make an amending motion.
That's always interesting on emphasizing on the greens, plants and so forth, because it does make the area look a lot nicer and more inviting. But as far as the adequate drainage of these, so like, if you're going to go ahead and plant all these things, how are we going to continue watering them so they can continue not to die, being the fact that we have a shortage of water right now? It's almost stage 4.
I'm trying to think of the short way to answer it besides saying it is feasible. We have technology such as bags for new planting that we could use the recycled water in, and those release water
Part of why
slowly.
you use native plants, but
So
there's ways to make it work.
If it's a priority, it can happen. I will also say that even before today's storms, there was water in the ditches.
Yeah, drainage, do we need to recommend that? I think that's just a no-brainer. They have standing water for weeks after a rain.
Yeah, so,
Good.
and I think that that's just a concern of residents who've seen, spillage over onto Park Road 22 from, those ditches on the side of the road, and that,
Well, I've just seen that happen in other districts where we do try to build a corridor, real nice, beautiful. We try to put a little bit of landscaping on it, and it just doesn't get maintained.
yeah.
And I want to see it maintained because I live in District 1. And I like to see the plants, and when they start to build a corridor down 624, to continue to do that as well. And of course, we're going to go about what type of plants they are. And I think now the plants we're going to have to use is something more like what they use in Arizona, almost because,
The good news is native plants are acclimated to our temperatures and our climate and our ecosystem. So if we
great.
stick to natives, we're probably in good shape. I
Great.
personally have not had to water my trees yet, and the way it's going,
yeah.
my rain barrels will take care of it. I don't think I'll have to water them until July or August, so.
No, in all, I think it's an excellent plan. I love it. I can't wait till it does start to get into action,
The second change from the ISAC, just so I make sure to highlight it, both Sea Pines and Whitecap Boulevard West, so this is west of Park Road 22, not the east side. There initially was a recommendation in the interim and future to take one of the travel lanes in each of those 2 street segments and convert it to just for bikes and golf carts. There's additional desire to take a look at some data and what whether or not that would be an appropriate recommendation. So we'll take another bite of the apple. With ISAC, we can always come back and amend the plan after it's adopted. So that's not at all an issue. So both staff and the ISAC are recommend adoption with the amendments from the Island Strategic Action Committee.
And did it look on the white cap, it brings it down to 1 lane, right? 1 lane each way?
That was the original recommendation, but if you look at the printout of the recommendation
It's now
from
back to 2?
ISAC, it's the back page of that stapled set of pages, so page 64.
Okay.
It would now be to come back, revisit that with recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have?
Does the city already own all the right-of-way? Because all these say 100-foot right-of-way, so it's already, there's no
Yes,
more
this
acquisition
is all
needed.
within the right-of-ways
Great.
that, yes, from the plats.
They have large right-of-ways on there.
Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, no, and 200 feet of right-of-way for Park Road 22 it's exceptional. We should be able to do something exceptional with it.
Is there any plans for striping or signage or, showing people that this is golf carts, this is bikes, this is?
Yeah, all
I
of
feel
that-
like it'll be a cluster.
Yeah, everything will have to be worked out in the engineering phase to make sure that we're following all the transportation guidelines. Obviously, our traffic engineering folks are going to be sticklers, but the intention is to have the sharrows as well as 15 mile per hours on the golf cart bike paths, because obviously golf carts can go much more than 15 miles per hour. If you want to drive like a car, you have to go in the vehicle travel lanes. If you want to take it nice and leisurely, you can go in the 15 mile per hour lane, right? That's the intention there. And so, yes, the answer is yes. What that looks like will be during the engineering design determined.
And then ultimately, the order of what projects get done at what point, that's just ultimately up to the TERS board?
So there'll be like anything, we have a process, right? Whether it gets on a bond or it's TERS funded. The stuff that's west of Park Road 22 is not within the TERS boundary, so the TERS funds wouldn't necessarily be used. I shouldn't say that, that's not wholesale. Just realize why Cap Preserve is part of the TERS. They amended the TERS boundary, so items that are outside of the TERS boundary would be unlikely to be funded with the TERS funds, but we have other sources of funds with this in the city. Beyond just the bond, we have access to the Type B funds. If it's an economic development facility, that might be an appropriate fund. So we'll be looking at that, also grant funding. So those will come with their own requirements if it's a grant-funded project. This just helps direct staff on where to focus first. And so the short-term projects will be prioritized over things identified in the mid and long term. And as always, if something is identified as more important and it's in the midterm, we just amend the plan. These things are living documents. And the ISAC will continue to be engaged, I'm sure, just as they have been with the area development plan implementation.
Great, appreciate the presentation.
2 questions. Is 14 feet wide enough for bikes and golf carts and pedestrians?
Not all 3. Oh, can we bring the presentation back up? I want to go back to one of the earlier slides. Thank you. Oh, just one
in
back.
here, yeah.
There you go. So the preferred operating width for a golf cart is 7 feet. The preferred for bikes is 5, so we're golf carts and bikes, so that 14 feet, 1 in each direction, that would be fine. Pedestrians would have a separate facility to either. So the only shared use paths are either bikes and golf carts with pedestrians separated, not sharing, or there are recommendations in a few instances where bicycles and pedestrians are sharing, and I think those are 12-foot wide. So we did take a look and make sure that we were following all the transportation guidelines, design guidelines, that most current ones.
Okay, that was my concern. The other concern is I think it's great that you're reducing the speed limit from 55, but is 45 slow enough? Did you look at that, the possibility of reducing it to 35? I mean, Rod Field, the speed limit in some sections is 30 miles an hour.
And there's a portion that's 25 miles on Park Road 22 during school hours, right? So we do even have a school speed limit there as well during operating hours. I would say the answer for now, given that the design for Park Road 22 is not changing for vehicles, right? We're keeping the lane configuration with median. It will be incremental, right? So that's not something we are recommending at this point, but it's certainly something that can be revisited.
Ed, I know you've been down in Joslin recently. It got reduced, but the speed limit is still very much 50, even though it was 45.
Exactly. That's what my concern is. If you reduce it by 10 miles an hour, but people are still going to be going 55 miles an hour.
Right.
And, my concern is injuries,
Right.
you know.
And again, in the design process, maybe we'll work on, the configuration of the pavement for vehicles. I want to leave that to the engineering design process and make sure that we're following those procedures so that the engineering team can help us identify. Again, if community said 45, this body is certainly welcome to make an amending recommendation.
For what it's worth, there's calculations for that. It gets real nerdy. But with the amount of driveways and everything onto Park Road 22 that have grown since, original, you run that calculation, it's probably 45 or less. And I'm sure TxDOT will run that. But that did make me think of another comment. If you can add a note on there, I'd like to see it in here, to have them consider the 2 schools that are out there, because when they're doing pickup and drop off, those cars are all stacking. So if there's any changes to the configuration, make sure they keep, right now they kind of use the shoulder, but if there's going to be any changes to that part where you're changing any configuration, we want to make sure we at least have some kind of shoulder or some stacking space so that they get out of the traffic way.
And that's specifically for Park Road 22 as opposed to Palmyra?
Yeah, because the 2 schools, there's an elementary school and a middle school that are right on Park Road 22. And that's where those 2 school zones are that you were talking about.
I wonder if that would be something to be put into a recommendation, if you wanted us to make a change to the draft plan as presented.
So you need that in the motion, you mean?
If you want us to make a change to what we present to council, and again, it would be a recommendation. So we'd present ISAC's recommendation, Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay.
Am I following procedure?
Make note to do
Yes.
that.
Thank you, sir. I always look to my lawyer.
I had a couple comments too. I guess your biggest challenge is going to be dealing with the bridges, I would imagine, right?
When you say which bridges? Let's
Well,
be specific.
if we're going to have these paths be continuous, and have the full island mobility plan, obviously the Don Patricio Bridge does not have these lanes on it today. And so it would have to be some sort of addition to that. And I don't know whether I don't think you can cantilever anything off of those
No need.
structures.
That was part of what you'll see in the appendix. There's enough pavement that we can fit.
You can fit?
We can fit. They built those quite wide on the Don Patricio. So we have that, and that's also why we did the load analysis as an initial step, just to say, initial feasibility shows that we can do that for the Don Patricio Bridge.
Yeah.
One of the things with
Gypsy Bridge is a different story.
Gypsy,
And-
we took a look at that, and that's why there's a limitation in that recommendation in terms that you're not going to have lanes or sidewalks on both sides, so you can take a look. And that interim, right, if we wanted to spend all the money in the world, we can make anything work. And then one of the reasons for the Whitecap West initial recommendation that is now, to be revisited was because of those bridges there, leaving very little room for anything else, even pedestrian sidewalk space, so.
And then TxDOT would have to be a willing participant in the bridge to Snoopy's?
Yes, that's their right of way as well, and anything that would affect the JFK Causeway, they would be particularly interested in having a say in. But we hope to partner with them on the entirety of Park Road 22.
Okay. Well, I like it. I think y'all did a great job, and I'm looking forward to it. I know
Agreed.
it's gonna
Great job.
Going to be a process and some time to get everything
Yeah.
to become reality. And, you know, as far as landscaping goes, there is purple pipe, you know, in some of those areas for irrigation. And I'm with Commissioner York, or Chairman York, with regards to, you know, oaks. Because, I mean, there's plenty of scrub oaks on the east side of Park Road 22 that never get watered at all. They're very healthy, and so I like it.
Any
Feel free to
other?
add that to an amendment if you want the oaks in there.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that. Say,
Just native,
reference.
native flora.
And shade trees.
Well, it's just,
Yep.
palm trees aren't native, and they're very freeze susceptible, and once they're established, they typically do pretty well over here, but there's always difficulty getting them to establish on the front end. And so, you know, whatever we can do to minimize water usage and reintroduce native flora, I think it's a good idea.
With that, I guess we can open up public hearing. If there's anybody would like to speak on item number 6.
Howdy, Craig Thompson, Vice Chairman of the ISAC Committee. Chairman York and Commissioners, appreciate y'all hearing us today. We've been working as Vice Chair, but also as Chairman, or as Chair of the ADP Subcommittee. We've been working with Karen and Dan now for a couple months or so, maybe more than that. Really appreciate their efforts picking this up and running with it to get it over the goal line. As y'all can see, they've done an outstanding job with it. I did have just a couple comments that I wanted to mention about the width of the right-of-way, and one of the benefits of the width of that right-of-way, and one of the benefits of this plan is that interim design that they've put in there to be able to come in and utilize some of those really wide roadways and the wide right-of-ways that they have. Like Windward, Leeward, some of these others, a lot of those roads have some really wide pavement sections right now that really aren't necessarily used for traffic or vehicular traffic. But to be able to come in and be able to stripe those, to be able to extend, you know, mobility within that pavement out to the golf carts and bicycles, I think was a real benefit, and one of the things they should be complimented on including that. You mentioned drainage, Michael. It shouldn't necessarily need to be mentioned, but we felt like it did need to be mentioned, especially on Park Road 22. You know, some of those low-lying areas, we definitely need to make sure. I mean, you know, that high groundwater out there, it doesn't take much of a rain when you get some high groundwater to push it out onto the roadways, which it does out on Park Road 22. We felt like that was important to mention that. The green space goes without saying. That's not a hard sell to anybody. And so just a couple things that we added. I think that was it. Again, appreciate y'all hearing it, and really look forward to getting this thing moving to the next stage. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. If I may help with this motion. So we'll entertain a motion to recommend approval of the Padre Mustang Island Mobility Plan with ISAG. Do we need to recommend with ISAG recommended changes? Okay, so to recommend approval with the recommended ISAG changes and the Planning Commission additions to consider Park Road 22 road configuration to accommodate the existing schools that have stackings on the road during pickup and drop-off, and to give preference to native plants and oak trees for use in the landscape areas. Somebody would like to make that motion?
I make the motion that he just said right now.
Perfect. Yeah, we do that, just so moved.
And I'll second
I
it.
second.
All right, we got a motion and second that was written out, hopefully already. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion
That's what
passes.
the recorder's for.
I'm like writing it all down.
Moving on to director's report.
No report for tonight.
All right, any future agenda items?
I just have one quick item. Whenever we get packets like this for this or for budget or whatever it may be, is there any way to get these before the actual meeting? Because we seem to get them and then
On Legistar.
I didn't.
Certainly they have
I didn't-
PDF.
The presentation was
I saw
was
the
available.
presentation, I just didn't see like,
The ISAC thing, yeah, well, I don't know if that was on Legistar or not, but
CIP, you'll definitely get at least 2 weeks in advance.
okay. Great,
That's always fun.
thank you.
all right, we are adjourned.